Mario games have always been formulaic in nature. The games generally involve platforming across areas and jumping on enemies that usually do little to defend themselves. This isn't necessarily bad. In fact, the success of the series and the genre overall is due to how Mario games are easily accessible. With how long Mario's been around in gaming culture, however, I often wonder how games could have turned out if the Agile Plumber didn't exist. Ironically enough, Nintendo answered my question with their clever new game, Captain Toad's Treasure Tracker. For those that don't know, Captain Toad's Treasure Tracker is a spin-off game focused around the Captain Toad minigames from Mario 3D World. In Mario 3D World, certain minigame stages had the players navigate Captain Toad around these cube-like dioramas in order to get extra green stars for Mario. However, the plucky adventurer cannot jump, so the stages become an exercise in spatial awareness through camera control. This minigame, however, picked up so much groundswell that it managed to get its own game, vastly expanding on the original mechanics and design. In this video, I'll be exploring some of the clever decisions behind the development of Treasure Tracker, looking at concepts such as camera trickery, how the developers design puzzles around levels, and how Captain Toad himself deconstructs certain game concepts. Before we start, however, there's one slight problem. The game only has one save file and I've beaten the game 100%. I'll do my best to demonstrate the ideas at hand, but many of the objectives in this game will be shown as silhouettes and might be hard to see, so pay extra attention. The main design focus for the Captain Toad game model is working around the idea of a fixed camera angle. The camera in this game is freely manipulated by the player, however it doesn't follow our stalwart Toad at all, or anything for that matter. The level design revolves around actively using the camera to find the path to the end of each stage and unveiling the hazards that are just out of sight. In a way, the stages themselves become the puzzles, requiring players to actively take part in manipulating them mechanically and visually in order to progress. By integrating camera logic into the game's design, the developers found a neat way to add a new type of challenge from a long-existing standard of game development. Ever since the advent of 3D gaming, players have come to expect the camera to work for them, and over the years that has become a standard in video game development. With Captain Toad, however, the developers did some neat and dirty tricks with designing stages that they can't get away with from a standard form of camera logic. One of the first levels to do this is the first Minecart Stage. In Treasure Tracker, there are stages where Captain Toad jumps in a minecart and players must use the gamepad to aim and defend themselves against enemies. The first diamond in the first minecart stage is directly behind the minecart, which sounds simple enough on paper. Had the game gone in the traditional route of keeping the camera behind Captain Toad, this collectible would seem overly simple. However, with the isometric view and how the stage is initially presented, players cannot see the diamond without actively moving the camera to scout. Some players may even miss the diamond entirely if they go straight for the cart and follow the instructions to look directly at the tablet. This kind of design can be seen in other stages throughout the game. One of my favorites is a 1-up hidden so far up in stage that you can't even see it with the game's camera, but only through the scope of a turnip cannon. Captain Toad really hammers home how much players have taken camera controls for granted, and I'm glad to see that they took the time to do dirty tricks just to keep the players sharp in that regard. On the note of cameras and presentation, the levels themselves are designed in a way to make them feel much vaster than initially presented. For most games in the 3D space, stages are usually presented in a grand and open manner. Conversely, many of the Captain Toad levels seen in 3D World and subsequently Treasure Tracker are mostly compact and presented as a diorama. This may seem like a squandered use of 3D technology, but Captain Toad takes this into consideration. Since the player is directly manipulating how they see the stage, level designers can put so much more level into a level without making it seem bloated. As players progress through a stage, the levels effectively fold out and feel much larger than originally shown. In a way, the designers managed to apply a 2D game design logic in a 3D space. This is especially noticeable in Piranha Creek Cove, where Captain Toad has to navigate many underwater caverns and cliff faces in order to get to the star and, optionally, the diamonds. The stage is effectively a cube sliced in a diagonal fashion, and getting every item requires the player and Toad to navigate the paths on each cube face to get full completion. This kind of design philosophy is really quaint and also very efficient. It gives players an obtuse challenge not normally seen in games, and it gives the game console much less to render, and as a result, improved performance. The main reason why the camera scheme works so well, however, is due to the core concept of the Captain Toad minigame model. As mentioned before, levels are usually presented in a diorama fashion. This was intentional even from the prototype stages of the game, where the developers initially tried to pitch this as a concept for a Zelda game. The main idea is that since most of the game's puzzles focus on the perspective of the stage, players would need full control of the camera but not have it interfere with the presentation of things. The choice for an isometric view then makes far more sense. For one, it gives the general gameplay a slight puzzle box feeling, which directly complements the game's design direction. And secondly, the use of any other camera angle would present conflicting camera issues, namely with clipping into walls or a general lack of vision on the puzzle itself. The latter point here can easily be seen in-game when the players use the zoom in button, which allows for higher visual fidelity but restricts the player's vision to a limited range. It's easy to see that despite the game's humble beginnings, the development team knew exactly how to handle the game's presentation for the player. On another facet of interesting design choices, the very concept of the Captain Toad character leads to some really obtuse and entertaining ideas. For those unaware, Captain Toad basically deconstructs the Mario franchise. His heavy backpack prevents him from jumping, he's generally slow, and the poor guy has very little means to defend himself outside of turnips. With such a helpless character, many traditional Mario tropes that are normally non-issues are suddenly really huge roadblocks. Sure, Mario can brutally murder Goombas and Shy Guys without a second thought, however, Captain Toad's just a civilian and can't really do much to fight off these former punching bags. This reflects in the level design in many ways. Floaty Fun Water Park has Goombas that auto-track you and node turnips nearby to kill them. Meanwhile, Shy Guy Heights has several Shy Guys on patrol that Toad must either sneak around or find creative ways to kill them. Treasure Tracker plays on many normal gaming tropes as well. Games often have the stereotypical chest-high walls that characters can't pass over for no real reason. Meanwhile, we know full well why Captain Toad can't jump over a wall half his size. His bag of treasure is just too heavy. Boss fights also reflect this kind of logic as well, to where a simple fight for the Mario team becomes a grueling trek across precarious cliffs and enemy attacks for the poor Toad. It's always nice to see games designed around the very concept of a character, and with Captain Toad it really felt like the developers had fun designing Mario levels without the luxury of a simple jump. For a final spin on things, it's interesting to see how much consideration went into the design of levels when we take a look at the objectives for each level. Each stage in the game has a star and 3 diamonds, with both being somewhat necessary to advance the game. The stars act as the game's end flag, while the diamonds act as semi-optional side objectives. The diamonds are placed in a way to expand on the game's mechanics, however not every diamond is necessary, so players can skip some diamonds that give them trouble for later. Once you solve the main puzzle of beating a stage, an optional objective appears as a new way to approach the level. These objectives are somewhat trickier, usually involving a deviously hidden gold mushroom or remaining undetected from enemies, but they're by no means easy either. A notorious example of this is Magma Road Marathon. The optional objective is to collect 150 coins, which sounds simple enough, but it's shorthand for collect every coin in the stage. Despite having a safety net of 10 secret coins at the end of the level, the difficulty in this challenge is compounded by the stage itself, since it's a zone where players are forced into constantly moving with no time to think. Finally, as a test for the truly crazy players, those who collect every trinket and complete every challenge are treated to an optional speedrun challenge, which in itself is a new way to process the design of a level. Rather than solving the issue of collecting stuff, players must now figure out how to navigate a level optimally with the humble Toad adventurer. In some levels the times are reasonable, but others really require one to look at the level to solve it. A prime example of this is Piranha Creeper Cove, where the speedrun time of about 9 seconds seems wholly unreasonable unless the player is clever enough to realize that he could just walk on the boat. All of these challenges are great ways of getting more mileage and intrigue out of a level without it getting too stale, which is vital for gaming in general, but also in the puzzle genre where concepts are often used once and discarded soon after. Treasure Tracker does a really good job at taking its levels and challenging the players to approach it in various ways, which helps with keeping the game fresh overall and scales the difficulty curve in a respectable manner. Captain Toad's Treasure Tracker was a very refreshing game. Its design is complex with its simplicity, and it shows how to creatively condense level layouts in many ways. Its design philosophy revolving around the camera allowed for some really nice level layouts, and it helped remind me of how we've taken certain staple mechanics for granted. If you're remotely interested in game design, then Captain Toad is a good example of how to play against a player's expectations yet still make things a joy to play.